Shalom, giving honor and praise unto the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. We are in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 4, verse 15. I entitled this Plagiarism, / logic. And it reads, Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves, for you saw no manner of similitude on the day that Yah spoke unto you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire. Lest ye corrupt yourselves, and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air, the likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth. And lest thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven, shouldest be driven to worship them and serve them, which the Most High thy King hath divided unto all the nations under the whole heaven. So this right here is part of the Hebrew culture, in which in today's terminology you want to use the term that idolatry is being bashed. Idolatry is not supported inside of the culture of the nation of Israel. So one of the things to let it be noted and understood is that the Israelites were told to not worship anything like the sun, the moon, or the stars, or so forth and so on. Any fish, any beast, any man, or any woman. All right, so let that be noted and understood. What idolatry is the worship of an idol. And now, what an idol is an image used as an object of worship, a false god, one that is adored, often blindly or excessively, something visible but without substance. And that's exactly what idolatry is. Because they sitting there dealing with things and trying to make themselves be like the creator by saying, okay, if the Most High made a fish, I could sit there and make an image of a fish and then bow down to it. So I'm basically indirectly worshiping the work of my own hands. And that right there just goes against the orders that the Most High had established. If you want to be like the Most High, then live upright, live decently. That's how you can be like the Most High. Not these so-called Bible critics who want to sit there and state, well, if God is all loving, why will he have people starving? Meanwhile, you have the ability to help someone eat, but you don't do it. Maybe the Most High put it in your hands to help somebody to eat, but you too busy trying to sit there and wait for someone else to do something. That's how most Bible critics are, And then what unfortunately happens in certain cases is they'll try to sit there and per se like bash the scriptures or support or big up what they think or Egypt was about and so forth and so on. And it emphatically was not the case. What has been presented is a government funded version of what they want to present as Egypt. And obviously the scriptures don't stand in line with the government. So what they have to do is then give you a make-believe version of Egypt. And for those who are unknowledgeable of certain things concerning history, concerning the scriptures, concerning Hebrew, concerning Matuneta, concerning the true history of Egypt itself, what they have done is try to, in their indirect way, try to promote Egypt and thus in turn try to bash the Bible. But the ancient Egyptians were not trying to go and bash other people's cultures like that, if you understand that. Ancient Egyptians represented for ancient Egyptians. And if you're not of the line or the lineal people of ancient Egypt, one has to sit back and wonder, what exactly are you representing? What is your land, language, and culture? Or are you just pimping Egypt like America does with the eagle symbol on the dollar bill and the pyramid symbol? What exactly are you doing? Getting back into this right here, the Torah is the only culture on the earth that actually, as the saying goes, bashes idolatry in the way in which it does. It distinctly says, lest you corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air. So this right here goes to show you that we're not supposed to worship making images and so forth and so on. Now, some people try to say, oh, no, it's not worshiping. Yes, it is. It's exactly what it is. Because what it is you hold it up to a certain reverence. And if it's not something in which that is adorned and worshiped, because that's what worshiping is, If somebody were to break that thing, you will be highly appalled. So therefore, you do hold that as a god. Okay, so let that be noted and understood. One of the next things to get into concerning this particular subject matter is the fact that the ways of the nation of Israel is different than that of the ways of the other nations. And this is going to be a part one of a part two. Okay? Now, I have a book here entitled The Gods and Symbols of Ancient Egypt. All right? So that way we can gain some understanding from where the brother is coming from. This book right here, entitled The Illustrated Dictionary, The Gods and Symbols of Ancient Egypt by Manfred Lurker. Okay, now on page 54, right, in this book, we're going to see something about an Egyptian concept, because there are people who try to sit there and state that the ways of the children of Israel were plagiarized from the Egyptians. But here's a situation. When you say somebody plagiarized something, it is incumbent upon you as the plaintiff to produce who did it, when it was done, why it was done, and when did they have the opportune time to do it. Because see, if you're dealing with ancient Egypt, they had their own particular culture on lockdown, to where the average ancient Egyptian was not able to go up into their temples to be taught this, that, and the third. So how in the world then did the Israelites ever get up into Egypt to sit there and learn any secret science of the Egyptians? That would have never happened had Egypt had her own way. You understand? Now, the situation that happened with the Hyksos is a situation that let it be noted and understood that that's when the true Egyptians were actually pushed down into the southern part of the land of Egypt, and the Asiatics were also in the northern part of Egypt. You understand? So that's what that particular situation was. And when the Egyptians got rid of the Hyksos, there's no record stating that the Hyksos took Egyptian records with them. Because when they were driven out of the land of Egypt, they basically were just pushed up out of there by a war. So let that be noted and understood. So this is why I'm singing and speaking about the true history of Egypt, as opposed to that commercialized thing that the people have been given and accepted without any reference, without any books, without any source, without any authorship. You understand? In this book here entitled The Gods and Symbols of Ancient Egypt, we read, Geb. Geb was the personification of the earth. In one pyramid text, number 308, it states that the deceased entered into Geb. As god of the earth, he bore the plants which grew on his back. Water too sprang forth from him. According to an ancient myth, Geb, together with the sky goddess Nut, produced the sun. Hence, he became the father of the gods. He passed his earthly authority on to Osiris, and then to Horus, and finally to the king, who was therefore called heir to Geb. Now, one of the things to let it be noted is that you have different concepts of what they said of the earth was. It doesn't mean it was contradictory. It's just stating that Geb was the male personification of the earth. And the pyramid text may say this, the Heliopolis theology may say something else. So that's why it's very important to understand the culture of what it is being presented. Now, not trying to make it seem as if a brother is bashing on Egypt, but it is actually kind of what they will call being against nature, or being against what is natural, to sit there and state that the earth is represented by a male entity. And that is because earth takes seed. Males don't take seed. You understand? So this is why you have a lot of cultures that call earth mother, or they'll call earth in the feminine principle, not the masculine, as the ancient Egyptians did. You see? So now, if we go, brothers and sisters, same book here, we can go into page 90. All right? So that way we can gain some understanding. It says concerning Nut, according to the Heliopolitan theology, Nut was the daughter of the air god Shu and sister of the earth god Geb. Now, I want to sit there and let this be noted and stated and seen, so that way it can be noted. It says, according to the Heliopolitan theology, Nut was the daughter of the air god Shu and sister of the earth god Geb. So now we read about Geb being the male personification of the earth. And this right here shows that inside the Egyptian pantheon, you had it to where Nut was the sister of Geb. And also inside of the Egyptian culture, Geb and Nut also produced other offspring as we read in other references, such as producing the sun and so forth and so on. So each particular city or civilization that developed out of Egypt had their own particular way of looking at certain things. So now, one of the things to let it be noted and understood is I have a book here. It is entitled The Introduction or an Introduction to Ancient Egypt by T.G.H. James, and it has a sphinx as you see there. Okay, now on page 145 of this book, we can sit there and see something, and then let it be known that many people try to sit there and state that the Hebrew Israelite culture was plagiarized out of Egypt. As stated, they don't produce when it was done, why it was done, who did it, and the reason why they get stuck with the who question is because they state that ancient Hebrews never existed. So if you're saying the Hebrews never existed, then how can you say they plagiarized? That right there automatically is you stuck. Okay, so let's move on. It said the origin of the world and the nature of the gods who took part in its creation was subjects of constant interest to the Egyptian. Three distinct cosmogonies were formulated in the earliest times, based on the traditions of Heliopolis, Hermopolis, and Memphis. So I want to sit there and let that be noted. It says what? Three distinct cosmogonies were formulated in the earliest times, based on the traditions of Heliopolis, Hermopolis, and Memphis. See, it says three distinct, and it shows you Heliopolis, Hermopolis, and Memphis, and all of that being within the same civilization or in the same country. So let's look at these particular things on a map so that way we can gain some understanding of what's being spoken about, right? I have a book, another one that's in reference about an atlas of ancient Egypt. Okay, now on page 6 of this, we see the following. So that way we can see on the map the names of the places that we read. And it is as follows. Here's the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, that's north of Egypt. You have Heliopolis. You have Memphis. And then you have Hermopolis. So you got three distinct different ones that was accepted at different times according to whatever one decided. So if one had a particular god named Ptah, they accepted that at that particular time. If one had a particular god named Amun-Re, they accepted that at a particular time. So they changed their gods according to their cities, which is against the culture of the Israelites. So therefore, we see good and well that there's no way that the culture of the ancient Israelites was plagiarized from the Egyptians, because the Egyptians were comfortable with switching up gods according to city, according to which dynasty, and so forth and so on. However, once it comes right down into it, once it comes down to the ways of the children of Israel, that culture is particularly different, where Israel is what you would call a monotheistic, non-idolatrous culture. Okay, now, continuing on in this secular book here, An Introduction to Ancient Egypt by James, it says, in later periods, the Heliopolitan system was generally accepted, elements of the other systems being incorporated. So I want to sit there and let that be noted and stated. It says what? In later periods, the Heliopolitan system was generally accepted. Generally accepted. So basically, what is basically being stated is, according to the general consensus, whatever God they wanted to worship, that's what they did. The ways of the children of Israel is different than that. It distinctly speaks about such as we read in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 15 through 19. So my basic point in this is not so much a bash on ancient Egypt. It's more so a bash on this government-funded New Age movement type of Egypt that they done presented to the people, and in turn try to knock the Bible or bash the Bible in turn by not even using wisdom. Because here's where the problem comes into play at, without going to scriptures or any Egyptian record. You're saying that the Bible is bad, but you're saying that the Bible was plagiarized out of Egypt. And then you're saying that Egypt was the dawn of civilization and the light of the world, and all good things that came out of it came from Egypt. So if that be the case, if the Bible then was plagiarized from Egypt, how then is the Bible bad? See, there's too many questions that come up that have yet to been able to be answered. You see? So we're going to go on in part 2. Shalom.